Master the business of speaking with your hosts, Taylor and Austin. You're listening to Technically Speaking.
Welcome to another episode of Technically Speaking. We're your hosts, Taylor and Austin, and in today's episode, we're talking about what it means to be a conscious leader. Now, the world is changing, and the world is looking for diverse and trusted experts to motivate and empower their audiences. And the perfect person to have this conversation with us today is Kelly Campbell. Kelly had multiple successful exits in her business, ran a successful marketing agency for 14 years, helping purpose-driven organizations create change and impact and increase profitability. And she transitioned that success into her speaking career and her representation agency, Consciousness Leaders, where she pairs diverse and trusted experts with organizations looking for conscious leaders for their events, for their consulting, and more. Now, Kelly is an amazing person, and Austin and I learned so much in today's episode. We're really excited to share it with you. So as always, stick around until the end for some awesome resources, and we hope you enjoy this one. See you in there.
All right. Boom. We're live.
Wow. Man, another one.
We did it. It's so great. Kelly, welcome to the show. So happy to have you.
Thank you, guys. So good to see you again.
Yeah. You know, we kind of got thrown for a loop right before we got into the show today because we produced this podcast on Zencastr, obviously, as you know, Kelly, but they just pushed a huge update. And so we got in like getting prepared for this and everything was different.
We were like, I was like, I don't know how to use this tool.
It worked out though. So hooray for that, I guess.
That's right.
Well, we're so excited to have you on the show, Kelly. We were looking at your website and we found this ebook that you have, a Partner Don't Pitch, I think is what it was called. And there was a line item that was like on the page that got us interested. It was like a guide to the emotion economy. And I imagine this plays into like you and your topic and also the Bureau, which we'll get to in a little bit here. But I'm wondering if you can sort of start by helping us understand like what you mean by the emotion economy. And then hopefully that'll translate into all the other stuff we want to talk to you about.
Yeah, actually, that's a great place to start. I'm glad that you've picked up on that. That ebook's been out for a while. And essentially what I mean by the emotion economy is that I think that there's this longevity of thinking that businesses do business with other businesses. And that's not true, right? At the end of the day, it's always going to be a human to human connection. And so the more that you can listen and develop your own self-awareness, mirror back what people are saying, really hone in on what is most important to them, as opposed to just pushing through and getting your own pitch out. That's what I mean by the emotion economy. It's not any different from the fact that when advertising agencies started and understood that to be most successful, they had to kind of draw on people's emotions. It's the same concept, except it's just an evolution of that at this point.
Yeah, man, it seems more intrinsic than extrinsic, you know, like you said, a good phrase there, like draw on people's emotion. It has this kind of like, I don't know, predatory feeling.
Yeah, it's absolutely extractive. So this, I guess the linchpin or the difference here in what I'm talking about is instead of using that in a predatory or extractive way, using that to inform how you can better meet their needs as opposed to selling them something that they don't actually want or need.
Oh, man.
Awesome.
Okay. So obviously you've got an immense understanding of the marketing world and I'm really excited to get into that. But I think there's a really important point that I want to just emphasize here related to any business, which is that people are so intimidated by the idea of sales and marketing. And I think it's partially because there's been this trope that's gone on forever that like, in order to be good at sales and marketing, you have to be like manipulative. Maybe that's too strong of a word, but like you're trying to make your puppets dance or something. And so there's some magic formula of words or actions that you're calling for, whatever, that equal a sale. But like, I think that not only do you get more effective, but also the intimidation goes down when you recognize what you're just talking about here, which is that you, the person selling something, are a person talking to another person. And like, at the end of the day, it's a relationship, and relationships aren't hard, or at least they're not supposed to be, unless you're being, I don't know, unethical, I guess you could say. But anyway, so I think the biggest takeaway that I learned both from what you just said and from looking through the ebook and everything is like, you just have to bring the humanity back to the entire process of working with people. And when you do that, life gets easier and you become more effective. And that's a
Yeah.
good takeaway.
Yeah, I think the reason why business development is so natural for me and why I love it so much is the same reason why I think I'm a pretty great coach, to other agency leaders and owners. And it's literally just if you have the self-awareness and the understanding to hold space for someone, to be able to let them, essentially give you all the information that they need in order to help it so that you can help them, right? Figure out what are their motivations, what kind of impact is this product or service that you're selling or that you're representing. How is this going to impact them on a personal level, on a business level? The more that you can kind of develop that rapport to understand more of how this is going to impact them on that human, emotional, deeper level, you can have a much deeper conversation, and you're not selling at that point. You're meeting a need, providing tons of value, and developing that relationship, which then can lead to things, that you don't even imagine at this point, right? I've seen that time and again where even, conversations that I may have had a couple of years ago, somebody will come back and look at my LinkedIn profile. Oh, what are you doing now? Oh, I know somebody who needs that. And I love that experience that I had with you. Let me connect you. So it's like, it's the most organic way to do business development or sales. A lot of people think sales is a dirty word. I don't. I think it's just purely human connection and deep relationships, not relational sales in the way that people, I think overuse that phrase. But I mean like meaningful, authentic relationships.
Yeah. Well, Austin, what episode was it? Was it Dr. T we were recording on? The sales means to give, not to take. Was that
Yes.
Mm.
The
Dr. T, if
Latin
you're
root of
listening?
sales.
Much
Yep.
love. Yeah, Latin root of sales, right? Means to give, not to take.
That's interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, so
Very
it was a
cool.
lesson we learned recently. So just kind
Mm.
of reinforcing all of that. But yeah, I mean, it's awesome. We love the work you do, Kelly. So on that note, I mean, okay, you have a tremendous background, 2 successful exits to now your thought leadership business and your bureau, Consciousness Leaders. Like, how did all of that happen? Did you wake up one day and be like, this is what I want to do when I grow up? Or like just stumble into it? Like what? Yeah, how?
Yeah, I
I'll leave
wish
it there.
that it was. I wish that it was something like that, but no. The reality was, I woke up one day incredibly unhappy, incredibly miserable in a very successful business where I loved our clients, I loved my team. I ran a cause marketing agency for 14 years. So we focused on nonprofits, foundation. We called it CSR back then, corporate social responsibility. You might just call it social impact or sustainability now. But that was the focus of our work, which was sort of a reflection of the personal passion that I had for doing good in the world, right?
Yeah.
And running that company for 14 years, I made all the mistakes that you could possibly make. I learned all the lessons that you could possibly learn in that time frame, and there was still more to learn. But at the end of the day, it was impacting my marriage. It was impacting my health. It was just, and I couldn't understand why, right? I had a successful business with a great team, with great clients, and I was still unhappy. And so I made the decision to sell the company. And it was really hard because I don't have kids of my own. So at that point, it was like selling my 14-year-old daughter off, right? It was like, oh my God, what is
What
happening?
an analogy.
And, that happened. And then immediately after that, I was met with this, not to be, super dramatic, but I was really kind of confronted with this, like almost like ego death, because I had never known, I started the company when I was 22 years old. I had never known what it was like to be anything other than a CEO from a
Yeah.
pretty young age, right? And so now all of these scripts were running in my mind, like, you're totally unemployable. What are you going to do next? What is your purpose in the world? Like, what are you here for? And I was like, oh, like, this is big. This is like existential questions that I could not answer. And that sort of awakening led me to, well, I guess I'll just do consulting for now. I'll figure out, I think that there's a lot of value in owning, scaling, and selling an agency, a creative agency. And so I'll work with other people in that field. And I did that for a little while, but it was still, I could tell that there was like this thing inside of me that was, this isn't it. Like, this is closer. This is like a step toward it, whatever it is, but this isn't it. And then I had a conversation with a prospective client who said, I can't afford you as a consultant, but do you do coaching? And in my mind at that time, because I had no idea, I was like, so what's coaching? You just do it remotely and like charge a lot less and maybe meet less often? Sure, I do that. Right. And so that was me being naive as to not understanding what coaching really was. So I said yes, but basically I was consulting him for a reduced fee. And anyway, we get into the relationship and he started noticing that some of the ways in which he was showing up as a leader with his employees, he was actually bringing that home and it was showing up in his relationship with his kids and his wife. And he said, hey, I'm noticing these things. Is that like something that we could talk about? And it was like the heavens opened up and I was like, oh my God, not only can we talk about this, this is like all I want to talk about. And so again, it goes back to that human, really deep, meaningful connection and relationship and trying to help someone with what they actually needed. In that moment, it wasn't about scaling his digital agency. It was about helping him with what was top of mind right in that moment, right? And so we started working on that a little bit. And then that's kind of what springboarded the idea of, okay, I need to double down into understanding what does it mean to be a coach. I really wanted to lean into being a trauma-informed coach so that I could help people. I wasn't a therapist, and I didn't want to go into being a licensed therapist. But I knew that there was a correlation just from my personal experience between what I was bringing in, so like past trauma and things like that, that I was bringing in as a business leader into my business in the ways that I was selling, the ways that I was pricing, the ways that I was interacting with my employees, the ways that I was getting disheartened whenever I lost a proposal. So all of these things were so clearly connected to me. And I was like, this is actually what I think I want to do. So that's a long-winded way to answer your question, but that was sort of the path.
That's so
Man.
powerful. Holy cow. Let me make sure I'm kind of understanding this here too, because it sounds like the passion came from you identifying that there was personal factors, trauma in many instances, I'm sure, with a lot of people to varying degrees, that's being brought into the business that is affecting the performance and the happiness factor, the joy that comes out of running the business. But it also sounds like in some ways it went the other way too, where practices inside of business were feeding back into a more negative environment in a home life, where this client of yours, for example, is saying that it's affecting my marriage and relationship with kids and stuff. So I have this maybe intuition here that like there needs to be an alignment between who we are and what we know about ourselves and what we recognize about ourselves on a personal, non-professional level and the professional level, and sort of merging these things. Am I on the right track?
You're not only on the right track, the word is integration, right? So
Wow, look at that.
we've been taught that we have to show up a certain way in business, essentially wearing a mask, and then we can be ourselves at home. And when you try to create a silo or a siloed dynamic with your ego, with your way of being, you're essentially battling yourself every single day, right?
Wow.
And so people can kind of tell when you're being inauthentic in business because that's not actually how you are in real life. So I want to just kind of put a pin in that there's this misnomer that we have to show up more professionally. It's not that we have to show up more professionally. We have to show up more authentically, and then we can relate, and then business becomes easier, and then relationships with our employees and clients and things like that become easier because they can trust us more. They can trust that who we show up as is really the true us, right? And so it's that integration between the selves, right? And so there shouldn't be two. There should be one. And I'm not saying that you know, where if you're in finance, for example, showing up in like an Adidas shirt and and shorts to like a business meeting may not go over well because people want to see a certain persona, right? They want to take you more seriously. I get that, but that doesn't mean that you have to abandon who you are at the core. You can just, wear a nice suit.
Right.
You know?
That's a wrap. Thank you for listening
All
to
right.
Technically
Yep.
Speaking.
See you later. We learned what we needed to. I got goosebumps
That was
there. I
so
don't know about you,
valuable. Me
Austin.
too.
Yeah, holy crap.
Oh, my heart was fluttering a little bit right there. Yeah, Kelly. So, does this integration with professional and personal self, for lack of better terms, there's many versions of ourselves, I'm sure, depending on the context of the situation we're in, but is this how you define a conscious leader?
So a conscious leader takes that a step further. A conscious leader will have that self-awareness that they are, that authentic person that they're showing up as wherever they are, home, business, social settings, church groups, wherever, right? So they're the same person, they show up, there's a consistency to that. That means that there's a trust factor, there's a relatability, there's an authenticity, there's a genuine nature to that. So a conscious leader has that self-awareness and has been doing the work to understand that that is, the truth, right? Like the truth is I've got to show up as the same person, no matter where I am. Then on top of that, a conscious leader leans in to support their people because they understand that by supporting your people within your organization, that is going to pay dividends, right? And you don't do it with the intention of, well, this is how I'm going to make a ton of money. You do it because you care about the people who are under your stewardship, right? And then that naturally leads to also considering other stakeholders like the environment, right? So you're not going to be this super caring, like very genuine, people-centric person and then like dump wastewater in your local river, right? Like that would be out of alignment. So it's really about integrity in all the different aspects of your life, whether it's personal or business. And so conscious leadership is about all of those things. And you're still a leader. In this case, we're talking about running a business. So you're still considering the bottom line, but you're not putting profit above people and planet. You're putting it on the same plane as it. And that's really what conscious leadership is all about.
Oh man, what a good definition. Thanks for outlining all that. Super. I mean, it just the path isn't easy, as you know, like
No.
to get there, but it's definitely taking the abstract and simplifying how to get there, which is
honestly, to me, it's so funny that we have to have a phrase. I mean, I'm kind of going
right.
off on a tangent
Sure.
here, but
Please.
the fact that we have to have a phrase for showing up and doing the right thing is
Weird.
a little mind-bending to me. But since the industrial age, where everything was about productivity and extraction and profit, right? How do we get more out of our people if we need to just burn them out and replace them? I mean, you still see that today. That's why you've got quiet quitting and quiet firing, and you've got the resignation era and all these things happening because people are fed up with it. They don't want to be exploited anymore. And so the idea of a leader just kind of leaning in, supporting his or her fellow humans that are working to catapult their company or their organization, like that's very natural to me. But apparently that's not natural to a lot of people. And then there's the skepticism of, well, I can't support my people and consider the environment and make a profit. Like that would be utopia. That would be crazy. That's impossible. But when you actually look at the studies and the research and the companies that are flourishing, those are conscious leaders, right?
Yeah,
so
totally.
it's not the impossible. It's not utopian. I mean, John Mackey and Raj Sisodia were talking about conscious capitalism a decade ago. This is not a new concept. I mean, that's really where conscious leadership, the phrase conscious leadership came, it was born out of the conscious capitalism movement. And it's been picking up a lot of steam over the last decade, and now it's everywhere.
Yeah, for sure.
How much do you think like this modern technological age that we're in has contributed to this? Because I feel like part of the unrest and the reason that people are becoming so outspoken about what they need from their workplace and how they need to feel supported is because they have a voice now. You can speak to the whole world, no matter how small of a fish in the sea you are, whatever that phrase means. But like, I think that that has to have had an impact, right? The ability for us to connect with each other at scale in a way that we've never been able to, especially through that industrial revolution period where we were so focused on extraction.
Right, right. Yeah, I think technology has a huge part to play in it, but it's not the only factor, right? I think, to be honest, a lot of people had access to those things prior to the pandemic, right? And then you had the pandemic, the murder of George Floyd, and on, we could go on and on and on. And it got piled up and piled up. And I think people got to the point where they were like, wait a minute, I gotta stop for a second. I literally cannot function. I'm not okay. I have to now reassess everything in my life, which includes my job, how my boss treats me, how this, that, right? And so I think it was the perfect storm.
Wow.
And the technology gave us kind of that platform or that media to be able to say, yeah, this is not okay. So yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy about it. There are a lot of people
Right.
who I would call unconscious or low conscious leaders who are very unhappy about this, because when people set boundaries, it flies in the face of productivity if you're a low conscious leader, if you're not into supporting your people.
Yeah, right.
It's so funny that that's sort of the line of thinking for some people. And like there's
For a lot of people, Austin, a lot.
Yeah,
for sure.
screwed.
Well, there's examples that we see in the marketplace of people turning the tables a little bit and focusing less on profit in other areas. And then by secondary to that, I guess, profit goes through the roof. Like the one that comes to mind, and maybe this isn't the best example because of additional context that's happened since then, but Gravity Payments. They did their whole thing where the CEO
price, yeah,
right.
Yeah,
It's
right,
such
right.
a good example because it shows that like by focusing on the people, you actually get more of what you should
Right.
want according to traditional way of running a business than if you hadn't.
Yeah. You could also bring into that conversation, just again, because of the context with Dan Price, Patagonia, right?
Yeah,
Tony
Patagonia.
Hsieh,
True.
before he passed away, Zappos. I mean,
Mhm.
these were people who really leaned into culture that was very people centric. And so what happens when you focus on people and they feel seen, heard, supported, valued, respected? They are more productive, they're more loyal, there's less attrition, right? That leads to better customer service, better productivity, better innovation, more collaboration, which then leads to the greater bottom line. But it's a lagging indicator. It's not the thing that you focus on, right?
Yeah.
So this is when I do like speaking engagements about conscious leadership. It's like, yes, the profit will come, but it's not the sole intention. It's not the sole focus. Like the purpose of business is not to make money. And people are like, what? Well, then what is it? Right? No, it's not. It's to support the people within the organization and the ripple effect that creates within their families, their communities, the larger, ripple effect of that. And also you will naturally make more profit and probably, have higher margins because everybody's kind of working a little bit more, dare I say, harmoniously.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
know?
Well,
So,
we're seeing this unfold with the push of the 4-day work week, like that's kind of been lingering in the world for, I would say maybe for the really early, I wouldn't say adopters, but thought leaders in that maybe 5 years or so.
yeah.
And then they started testing that heavily maybe 2 or 3 years ago, especially in like Europe, let's say.
Yep.
And we have real proof of that happening. Of you take away a full day of what would otherwise be productivity and a low conscious mind, let's say, and that's fearful because now we're not going to make as much money. But now there's real proof, empirical proof, that productivity goes up or doesn't change at all, and profit goes up, and people are happier and they're loyal. And I mean, just to speak from our own experience, we initiated the 4-day work week, was it like a year and a half ago or so, Austin? Nothing has changed. The business has boomed. It doesn't matter that our team isn't around on Friday. Like they have a better life and are happier. And it's allowed us to attract talent that, otherwise would be taken by maybe better established organizations. It's not hard. Like you said,
Yeah.
it's crazy that we even have to have this conversation.
I know. So I've been doing 4-day work week for the last 5 years. And then about a year and a half ago,
real early. Holy cow.
Yeah. When you guys transitioned to 4, I actually went down to 3. So I work Tuesday,
man,
Wednesday,
all right.
Thursday. And
There it
I'm
is,
telling
Austin.
you,
We're going
I
to
am
3, man.
so productive in those days. And I use Mondays and Fridays for writing. So it's not that I'm
Wow.
not doing anything, but I
Right.
need a full chunk of time to be able to work, on the book. And so anyway, yes, it's that. And then the same exact thing, to your example, Taylor, is just the idea of remote work 5 years ago was like, we can't do that. We can't watch our
Yeah, you're
employees.
right.
We've got to install things on their computers to make sure that they're sitting in their seat. It's just ludicrous. You have to trust your people. And then what happened? We didn't have a choice. We had to go remote, or now we have to go hybrid, or right. And yeah, it's like the everyone has seen productivity increases, but without that mental health and wellness and break time and real
Right.
white space, people can actually push too far into that, and they can become a little too invested in working from home. But then again, that's the leader's job, or a
Yeah.
leader's job, to be able to say, hey, still within working hours, right? We don't expect you to be answering an email at 10 o'clock just because you've been home all day.
That's right.
So
Yeah,
anyway,
expectations.
we could talk for
Yeah, I know.
hours.
We gotta have a whole long episode about this
Seriously.
stuff. I feel like, holy crap, yeah, I made the mega episodes. So okay, so I want to segue just a bit, because at some point you created a bureau to help position people who have this mindset, these leaders in front of. So like, how did that happen? What was the mission behind that? Can you just share that
Yeah,
journey for us?
so that happened after the murder of George Floyd.
Okay.
I started thinking about the fact that, again, people are not going to be okay. They're not okay already. We were, I don't know how far into the pandemic when that happened, but it was enough where people were just already kind of super traumatized, super burnt out, really uncertain about what was going to happen. And then it felt like this tidal wave of something that, racism is something that we have all been um, dealing with and a part of and have a hand in, and or are on the receiving end of, for a very long time. And then after that happened, it was like, wow, this people are going to need help. Employees are going to need to feel more supported. And that's a really difficult conversation within organizations. Most leaders will step back very far, wouldn't touch that conversation with a 10-foot pole, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of had the foresight to say, okay, well, whether it's talking about race within an organization or talking about trauma or mental health, I mean, all of these things were just surfacing. And I thought, well, if I was a leader, whether I was in HR or DEI or just, part of a leadership team of a small, medium, or large size organization, where would I go to find someone who could help me facilitate that conversation, or come in to speak with our people, or come in virtual conference, in-person conference, summit, leadership retreat? Where would I find those people? Would I just do a Google search? So I started looking, and I was like, oh, that doesn't exist. There is no one place where you could find people who I would say are experts in conscious leadership, umbrella term, but then have nuance expertise within DEI, sustainability, mental health in the workplace, you name it, right? Somatic emotional release, all of these things that are kind of subsets or nuance topics underneath conscious leadership. So I thought, well, if it doesn't exist, let me build it. And, this would have been my fourth company that I've built in my career. And I felt like it was a really nice culmination of all of the skills that I had, right? Because if you're going to build technically an online platform or a
Right.
web-based platform where people can, find folks that they're looking to bring into their organizations, I just felt like, well, my background feels like a really good fit for this. I have a lot of passion for it. And also, as someone who identifies as a woman and is part of the LGBTQ community, I wanted to make sure that people who have historically not been represented, BIPOC, LGBTQ, people with disabilities, military veterans, those who identify as neurodiverse, like on and on and on, all of the what I would call the global majority, because I don't use the word minorities, but the global majority, which is actually a more accurate term for all of us. I wanted to create a space where there was more visibility for them, right? And so that's really what Consciousness Leaders is. It's at this point, it's the world's most diverse collective of experts on conscious leadership.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Wow. That is so cool. I love that. So what happened in the marketplace when that happened? Did you find that people were as receptive to the idea as you, like, your intuition was telling you? Was there barriers that you had to get past? What was that like?
No, there were no barriers. I mean, at that point, people were very hungry for this, right? So the demand was really high. It definitely has not trickled out or trickled down, or come down in any way. I would say that people are now realizing that what they did, because they didn't know any better, by creating DEI roles or just taking somebody who happened to be a person of color or happened to be gay in their organization, and they're like, oh, you're our new, head of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Or, there was a lot that I would say were missteps. I think organizations now, so about a year and a half later, are realizing that they actually need a strategy and they need to bring in the right people to help them. So when we represent speakers, coaches, consultants, authors, and workshop facilitators. So it's a nice sort of inventory of what are your challenges, right? This goes back to the business development conversation from earlier. Taking a consultative approach with these organizations to say, what are you struggling with? What is top of mind? What does leadership really need? Where are there gaps within the organization? How can we help fill them? That's a much different conversation than book this motivational speaker for $50,000 for a 45-minute keynote. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
Totally does. Yeah. Well, I imagine it's got to be a little challenging too, because there are so many gaps. Like, there's so many areas that have come to light that we really need to take a look at if we're going to bring people together and help our organizations become sustainable towards the future and everything. So it seems like that consultative approach must be really the only way, since you kind of have to meet organizations where they're at and look at their strengths and weaknesses and figure out what's going to create the most impact. And so are you personally involved in that process with the clients that come through the doors most of the time?
I absolutely am. I'm going to do that as long as I possibly can. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm spending about 50% of my time doing that and 50% of my time with my own, coaching clients. And it feels like a really good fit right now, in terms of and utilization of my time. That may change at some point. I may lean a little bit more into the consciousness leaders, but for right now, it feels like a good fit. And I have an amazing executive assistant who just helps me every single day. I literally do not know what I would do without him.
Heck yeah. Well,
that makes
need all the help in the world we can get. So
yeah, man, and there's a little team kind of behind the scenes for consciousness leaders. It helps with upkeep of the website and technical issues and things like that. So I'm not doing everything. I'm hopefully smart enough to know that that's where my time is best spent. So I do have a team of 3 or 4 people who handle all of that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful website too. And fourth company go around, you learn some lessons, as you alluded to earlier. So
been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
That's right, for sure. Oh, Kelly, this has been a super cool episode, really unique. We haven't had this conversation and from your perspective at all yet. And it's just so cool to what you're creating is awesome. It's what the world needs right now. You're a true entrepreneur. You're there for humanity, which is so cool. It's intrinsic, it's not extrinsic, which is just awesome. So that being said, thank you for coming on the show today. If someone wants to learn more about you, Consciousness Leaders, what's the best way for them to do that?
So my own personal website for coaching is klcampbell.com. And then, of course, Consciousness Leaders, very easy, is at consciousnessleaders.com. Little tricky to spell, but you'll get there.
For sure.
Yeah, you say that. Taylor and I were both typoing the crap out of it the first time.
What is it? I got it though. It's going to be spelled right in the show notes. So you don't even have to type it. Just go scroll down, click the link. It'll be there. Check it out. Kelly, thank you again for being on the show. And guys, if you like this episode, don't forget to rate it, like it, subscribe to it. And if you want more awesome resources like this, go to speakerflow.com/resources.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in today. Check the show notes for more info and see you next time. Later.